Yeah. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Sustainiacs. I'm Michael Vincent. I'm always the Sustainiac, and I just found another one. And I found her in Guatemala City. And her name is Nikki Bahr. I wasn't running around Guatemala City. I was running around the internet stalking people to have on the show. And hey, it's been a while, but we finally hooked up. How you doing, Nikki?
Good, Michael. Thank you so much for the invitation. Looking forward to talk a bit about sustainability, bit about what's happening in Latin America, and hopefully inspire a couple of people to keep working on what they're doing.
100%. That's the idea. What's going on here is to really evangelize what you're doing and how you got involved and what that means to you and your family and the environment and how you know we can inspire other people to do it. So you founder of Sustainable Strategies? Is that what it
I
is?
am. I founded Sustainable Strategies just shy of 15 in May. It's our 15th year anniversary.
Oh,
And we
really?
started out focusing on how to really drive the power of business to provoke sustainable development. So we started out doing sustainability strategies, working with larger corporations throughout Latin America, helping them to understand, what are their main impacts and risks on social, environmental, and obviously governance and supply chain issues. Trying to identify, what their main topics around their industry are, driving strategies and reporting on that. And then, as of about 10 years ago, we started helping on environmental and social due diligences. So we've worked a lot with project finance, corporate finance, and more with investors and bankers, helping them understand, where do we want to put our money, and making sure that the projects and companies that they're investing in are actually complying with laws and doing a good job in compliance with international standards around sustainability. So we've been having
Hmm.
fun in Latin
That
America.
sounds awesome.
Quinceañeras is a big highlight, right? So we're looking
Yeah,
forward to turning 15 in 2 months.
that is fantastic. Now I can tell by your accent that you're from northern Guatemala City. Way northern. Um, before we dig into everything that you're doing, why Central and South America?
I'm fifth generation Guatemalan,
Okay.
and all of the women have imported men. So I have English, I have Norwegian, I have Canadian. So if you hear my accent, I think you're thinking way northern Canada. I studied
Oh
in
yeah, yeah,
Canada.
yeah. No, I'm
I
hearing.
attended UVA and
I've been in
Canada.
Kippewa, Quebec, and so on and so forth. And I'm thinking, wow. And I've been in Guatemala City, and I'm like, this doesn't sound exactly right.
So I have the Canadian citizenship, very active in the Canadian Chamber of Commerce and close ties with Canada. Um, and so actually, my great grandfather, who was Norwegian, followed my great grandmother down. They met in England, in London, and he followed her down to Guatemala, and they put up quinine plantations during World War II when
Oh
quinine
wow.
was sourced from East Asia, Middle East Asia, and those were being invaded by Japan. And so they set up quinine to help malaria, create malaria pills,
Oh wow.
being sourced out of this side of the world. And as he put up the quinine plantation, he reforested huge sections of forest, to kind of compensate the forest he was cutting down to farm quinine. And he received national medals, recognition, the highest national medal in Guatemala for his forestry compensations. But I kind of he's inspired my work in that I think sustainable development is driven more by the corporate sector than by governance sector. Have 4 or 5 years of leadership. You have larger investments, but they're not as strategic. Companies are much more agile. Their leadership is still in Latin America. You're talking about 20, 30 years of leadership in governance in large companies. So really working with the power of private business to understand, how is it that you're doing business, and who are the people you are hiring, who are the people you're selling to, who are your partners in business, and focusing that to capitalize on the positive social and environmental fronts are just has been very purposeful for me. And
Mm,
I really believe
yeah.
that companies are the ones that drive the difference. And I really believe that we've worked with various companies either in facilitating investment. I mean, we've managed over just shy of $1 billion in corporate finance in
Oh,
LATAM. And
wow.
so
Congratulations. That's fantastic.
if just a very rough estimate, and I don't have an updated number for this, but if you can think 100 jobs are created per $1 million, which is probably an underestimation, it really drives, satisfaction and saying, we're working or we've worked in creating jobs for significant
But
and
well, it also talks
good
to the
jobs.
point that sustainability isn't a scam that drains money or drains wealth, which some believe that there's some sort of ulterior nefarious motive to enforce ESG, et cetera, on businesses. And that's not the case at all. It's a blue ocean for societal advancement and improvements and uplifting lives and economic advancements, which obviously can and do support those kind of altruistic ideas or impacts, right?
Michael, I think we've all fallen victim to a very polarized political society, no?
Get out of town. Are
And
you
so,
serious?
this polarization is really impacting the potential to have deeper conversations around sustainability.
Yeah.
So we can have a conversation about the politics behind sustainability and what industries and what projects are being subsidized and what processes are being subsidized. But the capacity of business to do good in proper hiring, in proper partnerships with their supply chain, in proper management of water and I'm thinking in Spanish. I'm sorry here.
All of
And
the
the
resources.
desechos are the resources, correct? And where they're investing. I mean, when they're creating a transmission line, are you going straight through the natural jungle, or are you choosing to draw lines around protected areas? Are you
Yeah.
choosing to understand that a certain design of a transmission line is having a huge impact on predatory bird species or not? Or am I choosing the other alternative of a different design of the power line and have a huge impact on the bird species that later have a huge impact potentially on crops in the region because they facilitate pollination, etc. So we've seen that it's very different to talk about politics and to talk about real business and how the capacity to hire to create products that have a better impact or better social connection. The marketing schemes, etc. We've worked with companies just something this simple as in redesigning the distribution routes in a commercial company.
Right.
You give the transportation crew a better quality of lifestyle, giving them better hours. And the impact there for the company was a reduction of, I think, 75% in micro stealing of the cookies and the products that they were
Pilferage.
selling, and
The
a 75
the pilferage
free.
of the products, right? You
And actually
increase.
on accidents. And so
Yeah.
when you talk to business leaders worldwide, I mean, I think right now the biggest debate, thanks to President Trump, has been around climate change and the climate politics. But when you speak to top business, the World Economic Forum, has
Yeah.
published for the last 6-7 years, where the CEOs of the largest companies in the world are saying our biggest risk in the next 10 years are extreme climate events.
Right.
So you can believe in climate change or not, but still you're saying extreme climate events, be it due to climate change or not, are probably my biggest risk to my portfolio in the next 10 years. So what are you
Yeah.
doing about it? And how are you
Yeah.
building your locations and how are you distributing your investments to make sure that your business, your buildings, your supply chain, if you have a huge hurricane in the Caribbean, how are you going to make sure you get your products to your clients on time in the future?
Right.
So there's one thing that's politics, and there's another thing that's just real logistics and business.
Yeah, well, I 100% agree with you. Getting into the politics of it, it's less and less of a fruitful argument in my opinion, right? Because there are motivations there, and they change so quickly. And I 100% agree with you. It is the businesses, it is the private sector, it is the people like yourself who are driving the knowledge and driving out the ignorance, and kind of negative thought processes around sustainability from a business standpoint, not even a political standpoint, but a business standpoint, that are going to drive this forward, that are driving forward, probably because it doesn't matter. Like you said, it doesn't matter if you believe in climate and warming or climate change or anything like that. The fact is that it is changing. You can argue about who the cause is or what, and look at the last 150 million or 500 million years and look at the cyclical changes that we think occurred over that time, because obviously we didn't have instruments to measure it, but there are charts and graphs that'll show you all kinds of crazy things. The fact of the matter is that it's good business and it's good social, and we're being good stewards of the earth and of our society, and we're changing and improving the lots of people around the world as far as the haves and have-nots, and taking care of our environment. That just makes perfect sense. And guess what? It's an opportunity to improve profitability and efficiencies within your company as well.
Completely. Develop new products.
Yeah.
The millennials, the centennials, younger generations are connecting, and we've had 2 clients that have told us, the main benefit our sustainability strategy and report in the first 2 years, we're hiring better teams.
There you go.
And that's crazy. I mean, it
is. No, but it's awesome.
Staff. So,
Yeah.
we can talk about so many, theoretical gains, but when you start looking at business per business and person per person, in our due diligences, we just wrapped up the construction or supervising the construction of a wind project. And there, we required all of the contractors to pay, finish up, wrapping up paying their different workers. And that's kind of legally binding, no, Michael?
You mean instead of walking out and not finishing the payment? That's an occurrence, I guess.
Yeah, well, I guess.
Yeah, just leaving them hanging. Is that what you're talking about?
You're sorry.
They would just leave the workers hanging and without
the compensation packages. So they pay your last month's dues, but not the compensation packages. And we had over 300 workers come in and thank the company, the main company, who had required and not paid out their contractors until they demonstrated that all of the compensation packages had been paid out. And so, 300 people got a better life because we made sure that these other companies did their job. And you may be thinking, this is only LATAM, but we worked with American clients as well.
Yeah. It happens everywhere. This is not. Yeah, this isn't an anomaly that only happens in Guatemala or Central America. It happens all over the place.
And it's interesting because a lot of our clients have Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, or American contractors.
Yeah.
And these are the guys that aren't really paying attention to the fine print of what being responsible means. Really manning up to your commitment.
So let's get back. The motivations that you have are tremendous. I get the family, the generational connection to Guatemala and Central America, and it's beautiful. I've been there. It's absolutely gorgeous. I love it there. But from my hotel room, I could see, I think, 5 active volcanoes in Guatemala City, which was fantastic. That's right? There's 5 that you can see from
3.
3. Okay. Well, see, the fish gets bigger the longer.
No, actually 4. You're right, 4.
Okay.
Pacaya, Fuego, Agua, and Acatenango.
Okay, there you go. See what she said. I didn't. I cannot pronounce them. But exactly what is sustainable strategies going? Are you are you a legal firm, an investment firm, a financial firm? How are you engaging with these companies? Because what you said that you're involved in how you described it, means that you're like an expert in hundreds of different verticals as far as business is concerned. Or are you consultants in a way
We're
that
consultants.
work with them?
We're
Okay.
business consultants. We're agnostic to industry, so we've worked across the board with different
Okay.
industries, cement. We've worked a lot with steel, a lot with real estate, a lot with agribusiness, both forestry and sugar, African palm, banana. We've worked a lot with banana. And so we'll come on board either with your C-suite as a company and help you
Uh-huh.
understand, where is your business going towards in the next 5 years? How are you going to be impacting, or how can you benefit, or what resources do you need, social and environmental, and how are we going to manage that to make sure to put goals, commitments, and KPIs around your social, environmental, your carbon footprint? Are you going to be net zero? Are you just going to reduce? Or are you just going to manage? If you're going to hire people, how many of those can be locally sourced around your operations or around your investments? If you're sourcing things, how are you going to make sure that you're doing a good job in the sourcing? And what does doing a good job mean? Does it have to be certified? Do you have to make sure that your suppliers are working on health and safety, or they're complying with your values? Or how do you align, the rest of your supply chain to your connection? And then perhaps our second line of business, we come on board, paid by a client or a developer, but we owe our criteria to investment banks or to financial institutions who are giving out loans, and they want to ensure that where their money is going is operating sustainably. Okay,
So you represent banks and
banks
financial institutions
or
that
financial
want
institution,
that want
a
to
German investment
invest in
fund.
sustainable businesses, or is it
So I want
because it is law there within Guatemala and the
to,
areas that you
no, it's
operate?
it's voluntary, or
Okay,
it's
gotcha.
a principle of the financial institution that wants to make sure that their funding is going to an appropriate
I
place.
imagine it goes both ways, though, right? So sometimes it's the institution, but sometimes it's the company that's going to reach out to you and say, "Hey, look, this is what we want to do. And we're going to be sustainable. We're looking for funding."
That's
Do
my
you
first
operate in
line
that?
of business. And so there
Okay,
I work with
gotcha,
the owner, the manager, the C-suite, who says, I
gotcha.
want to do a good job voluntarily, or I
We
can,
want to do it right. Yeah.
or a client is asking me also.
Uh
A
huh.
client is requiring, I do this. So how can I really step up here? The second line of business, it's the financing. So it's the bank, it's the financial institution, it's the European Investment Fund. And actually, we've done this for private companies. So we've had a mine come in and say, okay, so we're looking at a specific mine in Latin America and we want to buy this mine, but we want to understand what the social and environmental risks of buying this are. Like, is the
Mm,
community going to give us trouble?
got you.
Are there environmental, passive environmental impacts that we need to take care of in the future here, or what do we need to figure out? Or we have an American manufacturing firm who's going to set up shop in Latin America, and they're looking at 3 different properties and want to understand which property is more convenient from a social and environmental perspective. So which community is better, where do we have better access to water and different resources, where do we not
Mm.
have, again, uh, previous environmental impacts that we might have to remediate in the future. And so we can come back on board for that American investor and say, okay, so you probably want to look at this or these 2 properties for your
Gotcha.
future. Yeah, yeah.
I imagine there's a strong social aspect to that as well, right? Where can we set up operations that also impact and can have the most? I mean, because you're looking for talent and you're looking for labor and you're looking for those type of things as well,
Mhm.
right? So
Correct. And
there's got to
indigenous
be
populations also. So if I
exactly
set up
yes,
shop
yes.
here, what's the difference of setting up shop here where it's either Ladino or an indigenous population, and what does working with that indigenous population mean in terms of extra work or extra human resources talent in working in
Right.
different languages,
Well,
etc.
there's different pockets of
Consultation,
different intelligence levels and or skill levels too, right?
completely.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So they have to look at those implications, and you can help with that as well. As far as, hey, we want to set up in South America or Central America. These are the resources we're looking for, and why we want to do this. Help us find the best place to set up operations, how to set them up with all of that encompassed, all that from employees that we're looking for, impacts on this on the society and the community that is there. Will we have to import talent? Will the talent be there? At what levels, etc. But and then all the social or the all the environmental impacts as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So
That
how do we
is,
do this properly in compliance with whatever we want to do, because each
yeah.
company has a different requirements from their investors, from their
Mm.
clients, from their internal policies, etc. So yeah, we've
So
had
from the
companies
opposite
change tracks
side,
also because of how to manage waste. This location is not offering enough infrastructure to manage wastes, etc.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, well, in some of those cases, that company that comes in would need to invest in that, and that's also an opportunity as well. No,
Yeah, yeah,
right? I mean, if a company comes in and says, "Hey, we're going to do this," and the infrastructure for handling the waste properly isn't there, the investment in that can also create jobs and side or ancillary business, right?
yeah, yeah. Or they're just they build up capacities in other local companies, which is also very cool.
Yeah,
They'll
gotcha.
talk
Yeah,
to an
yeah.
existing company and say, "So this is what I need you to do, and I'll sign a contract with you for 5 years. So I need you to figure out how you're gonna, step up the game."
Right, right. And so, do you go and from the opposite side with the connections that you've developed and the reputation that you have developed, which is quite strong internationally? I mean, I found you, so I'm not that good a I'm not that good a researcher, so um, you have a strong presence. Do the communities or the economic development associations of the different communities? I imagine they're there just like they are everywhere else. Do they reach out to you and say, "Hey, we've got all these resources. Can you throw some business our way?" Or do they utilize you in that aspect, or is that not,
Um,
but they could? Or
you know what? A couple of people have reached out to either sell or buy projects.
uh huh,
So, can you broker? We're interested in selling a 50 megawatt solar plant in X country.
yeah,
And so it's not something that we've done actively. We've done it passively, Michael. And
okay,
I have a lot of fun there because it's kind of calling old colleagues and friends and saying,
yeah,
hey,
yeah,
or there's a Canadian group and they're coming in and they're interested in buying or developing a wind project, do you know what's out there in the market? And so that makes me sit down and have coffee, virtual coffee with a lot of friends and colleagues, etc. And it's a lot of fun. It's a completely different line of business because there you are brokering
yeah, 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 yeah.
projects, and it's a lot of fun. It's not really what our core is, but
I
happy to
got you.
make those connections.
I got you. Yeah, I had a friend who used to broker the sale of oil platforms.
Okay.
Which was quite, it would buy from one country and sell it to another and then coordinate the move of these platforms, which was
Yeah.
absolutely mind boggling to me that somebody made a business out of doing that stuff. But it also makes sense. So you've been there for how 15 years you've been running this,
Sustainable
the,
strategies. Yeah.
the
Founded it
sustainable
15
strategy.
years ago.
Yeah. So are you mainly, I mean, I know you're based in Guatemala City. Is that the main operations, or are you all over Central, and do you reach into South America or?
We're LATAM based, and we've actually worked in the US. And we've got two proposals out in Africa right now, so that's interesting for us now. But we're
Oh,
mainly
wow.
Latin America. Based out of Guatemala, we've got about four consultants here. But our lead climate specialist and environmental specialist is based out of Bolivia. Our main,
Oh, wow.
our leader for everything that's related to real estate and sustainability is based out of New Zealand. Our main biologist is Hawaiian, and he is very fun to work with. You say aloha, and very interesting. My specialist on reporting is based out of Cadiz in Spain. And so we're quite global. I'm very proud to say that about 80% of our staff is women and originary from Latin America. But like Christina, she's based out of New Zealand. So
Yeah,
so yeah.
that
And
is
we've got more of a
that.
regional presence. We've done a lot of work in forestry in Paraguay, real estate in Peru,
So
um,
I'm
renewables
interested.
in Panama.
Is most of it, or what is the relation that you see, and have you seen any changes in this? Um, uh, like okay, so like bringing in and bringing wind energy, for example, it's an easy one to bring in. That's a new technology bringing in, right? What percent, or have you seen it as nascent technology development and new ways of being environmentally impactful versus old business practices being upgraded to their, so that they are better or more conscious about their environmental impacts and social impacts?
I think there we have for renewable energy, we have two main drivers. One would be the financial sector, or three drivers. I'm going to change that. So the financial sector has a very clear preference for financing renewable energy projects. Okay. So it's much easier to finance a solar or wind farm versus a hydro farm or a hydro project. Two, clear social preferences. Hydroelectrics have been much more associated with social conflictivity globally, and this is not Latin American. I'm seeing you can do speak to hydro projects in China, in Africa, in Norway, or anywhere else. Hydro projects are much more related to social conflict, and so um, financing institutions are kind of steering away from hydro projects because
And
those
why is that? Why is hydro more social conflict?
because
There's a lot of
access to
conflict with
water,
wind.
access to water.
Ah,
hmm
yeah,
So, be
yeah,
it with a dam or without a dam, hydro projects are associated with who has access to water or not. Even if it's just a run off the mill hydro projects, there's always lack of information, perceptions on who has more preference to water. I'm
yeah.
going
And
to
you can
migrate,
impact
Michael.
across borders. International borders can be impacted as well that way, right?
Completely, yeah. And so hydro
Oh, we're
projects have
traveling.
seen. I am traveling. I'm sorry, moving dust. I don't have my
It's quite all right.
connection. So here we go, and now we won't run out of battery.
Oh, excellent.
So,
That's
so
fantastic.
hydro projects for sure have a lot more social, and if they have a dam, environmental impact as well. But
Right.
that means that there is less financing available for hydro projects. And then the third is regulatory preferences across the world, and there are even government organizations that are lobbying strongly to develop hydro and solar and wind projects with
Hmm.
more frequency than other technologies.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
here's where you get into a bit of the politics, no? Because
Oh,
you're
yeah.
going to have other groups asking, we want hydro. What are you going to do with the solar panels? They're mainly sourced out of China, and we don't
Mm.
really know how to recycle solar panels. So what happens, after the 15, 20 years when they're done with their life cycle of use, who's going to recycle them? And there's not really a technology on how to recycle them yet. Or what do you do?
Wind is difficult too, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the
What
turbine
do you do
blades,
with
et
them?
cetera.
And
And
what do
there's
you
also
do with the
the
blades?
environmental impacts that are pretty real about the wind turbines as well, right? I mean, it's not a joke that the ones offshore impact the aquatic life, and those offshore and onshore, the birds and aviary are impacted as well, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We have a main biologist based out of Portugal on, when do
Okay.
you install offshore wind projects? You can't coincide with the main fauna's mating season. Because then if not, you have a big impact on that population. It has
Yeah.
the times on when you can do drilling, a bit like your friend in the oil industry. When can you drill? When
Yeah.
can you not drill, etc. Yeah.
Seasonality to those different energy sources in construction is
Same,
important.
exactly.
That
Mhm.
so what about now you mentioned the being able to recycle the solar panels, etc. Do you do a lot of work, and is there a lot of importance placed on uh, end of life and circularity of those resources that are available at end of life?
Um, how do I answer your question, huh?
I
So
don't
we
know.
work a lot with steel. So when we work with steel, that's one of our main focuses. And steel and glass are the two most recycled products and recyclable products globally. So how do you
Yes,
help clients position that and differentiate themselves in front of consumers who want to take
correct.
a better sourcing decision? Now, when we
Right.
work with renewable energy, what we put in are requirements for financing for the project developer to consider these issues. However, Michael, these are global issues. So, because there is a solar project in Honduras or a wind project in Ecuador or Colombia, and you set in requirements of, figure out a process for end of life disposal for your wind blades, how I'm not really there to supervise the end.
Right.
Or you have issues. We had a client that 7 of the blades got struck by lightning in their first 2 months of operation. So
Mm.
luckily, insurance comes in and covers the bill of bringing the new blades in and setting them up. But you have 7 blades,
Yeah.
and the cost of moving those blades and taking them to a proper, where do you dispose of this
Yeah.
product?
Exactly.
They kind of set them up as art, and we made a little. They made a little sculpture, and the community loves coming in and taking pictures with them. And just they're there, but they weren't tossed out into trash. They're art now.
Yeah, yeah, they've repurposed them a bit if they can. What about the general waste handling in the main areas? I guess you would know probably the most. Well, you probably know the most about a lot of areas, but there in Guatemala City, et cetera. What's the impacts there? Is there proper waste management there of just
I think that's going to be
post
one of your.
consumer recyclables and that type of stuff? And do you get involved in that type of stuff, or
Not
you know?
really. We're not involved in those issues, and it is a limitation, I think, for big companies that want to work across the region. So we worked with corporations or multilatinas who are operating in 10+ markets, and it is not standardized. So you're going to have to make a big effort in each country you're working in to identify proper recyclers or waste handling. Guatemala, for example, this year is putting into effect the classification and recycling of trash. So we're behind, most developed markets. And then you're going to have other
Gotcha.
countries like Costa Rica or Chile or Colombia that have, a couple of years, you know,
Ahead in the
ahead
recycling.
on these
So
practices.
I
And so
got
you're
so
going to
they're
have
just
better suppliers and better, assurances on end of life for specific, waste typologies. So in Guatemala, you'll find, great recyclers for, car tires and car batteries and a couple of other things. But then, just general cardboard, plastic aren't as developed, and there's not really a market around those yet.
gotcha. So the demand is that well, okay. I got you. So you mentioned supply chains. Do you get into the international supply chains and advisory there as well? Like the companies that you're dealing with, are you dealing with companies that maybe are entering that market through selling into that market, or is it setting up operations of construction only there, or manufacturing there? So, are you working with companies on import of product and making sure that they meet sustainability standards and or export to, like, say, the EU? or something, or North America
Um,
that they have different, make sure they're in compliance so they can compete internationally?
it has different drivers. So each client, that's the fun part. You have to kind of start up understanding, what the drivers are, and that kind of goes aligned with what the benefits are for implementing or drafting your sustainability strategy. So I'll give you two examples. We're working with a real estate development fund. They develop warehouses, office buildings for call centers, and single-use retail buildings, Peru or Mexico down to Peru. And we're developing a climate strategy. They've been recognized for the amount of buildings and square meters certified by LEED buildings. And we're working on decarbonizing both the construction and the embodied carbon that's in the construction, as well as the potential to reduce emissions during operations for their tenants. That's driven, one, by the banks who want to see more office buildings that are certified, but also by the clients who want to have a building with less use of water, less use of energy, with more renewable energy disposable to them. And so they're Mobiliare, they're really positioning themselves as being a leader in managing energy and water consumption, both in a building and operations phase. And two, we've worked with the largest steel mill based out of Guatemala, Aceras de Guatemala. Their geographic influence is to Panama as of a month ago. Now they've incursioned and they've purchased a couple of operations throughout Latin America and the Caribbean. And we've worked together to develop a steel rod made out of 100% recycled steel. And
Nice.
that has become a huge success with the sustainable building industry, because they want to certify their buildings. So they're looking for sustainable attributes in the products they buy. And what is a building made out of? Steel and concrete, So it's one of the biggest inputs. So there, the driver has been more on a commercial base as well, So we have fun. Each client is a bit different. Some of the clients come in and say, my European buyers really want to understand my impacts, my carbon footprint, and so I need to reduce my emissions there. And just each client is very different.
Yeah. So the climate there in Central America, is there a lot of government impact and influence or demand for sustainability, and not only sustainability, but your carbon emissions and so on and so forth? And does it vary from country to country? I mean, they're very, very closely packed together, and one can impact another. Your environment doesn't change just because there's a border, right? Your impact can impact across many different countries and societies. Is there governmental unity in the efforts,
No,
or no?
no. It's you have across the board diverse
Yeah.
advances, and I think that's an interesting aspect of our business, because it's more voluntary or market driven. So it's not really regulatory, and it's not as politicized in the region, because what is changing across the board, I would say, is one, requirements for reporting, where you're seeing markets like Costa Rica or Chile, Colombia having having more requirements on what companies report on social and environmental risks and impacts. And two, what I was mentioning in a larger regulatory requirements for renewable energy. But other than that, I would say it's a bit across the board. And even in the market drivers, you have a bit across the board with more developed or sophisticated markets, financial markets, including topics. So you have Costa Rica, where I think it's in 2 years, any bond or any emission that goes to financial market must have a sustainability attribute. And and other countries where that's kind of starting out. You have Guatemala has, I think, 3 sustainable bonds emitted. Sustainability linked bonds emitted. So the regulatory and the market aspects across the region are different, and I think you kind of have to go understanding those. But the good thing I would say is that behind that, it's all market and business sector driven. So you're not really talking about the responsibilities of complying with government, but it's more of a voluntary driver.
Yeah, I would imagine that there's a lot of advantage to that, right? I mean, there's obviously in the EU and in many other countries, the government is driving a lot of it, right? Through the will of the people, right? Through the votes, et cetera, that type of stuff. But they're not always the experts. The experts are the private sector, the business people, the people like yourself. Those are
Yeah.
the experts, and the ones that are voted in or not, there's ulterior motives there. I mean, they want to stay voted in, et cetera, and they have constituents and so on and so forth. So things can get diluted, and there's a bit of ignorance to the different technologies and sophisticated systems that have to go into place, because I mean you're across the board, all kinds of different industries, right? So do you see that as kind of an advantage, that it is market driven and not being dictated by a government, so to speak, in different aspects? Because it could get muddy quickly because you got so many different countries in small environmental areas
It
that
is, although it's a huge challenge. I mean, as the European Union, the requirements for compliance around sustainability in Europe are changing quickly. And, the last decision was to kind of like stand off on these requirements for companies according to volume, sector, etc. And I think a big challenge for that being market driven in Latin America is that a lot of the companies or industries are not really at the table. So when you have requirements on water use at the sustain in sugar, for example, um, Guatemala sugar industry recycles about 100% of the water they offset. The water is either reused in the industrial process, or it has been used to wash the sugar cane, and so it has a lot of nutrients, and it's sent out as an organic fertilizer, right? And so you're not going to get rid of that water. It's got a lot of nutrients you can reuse in the sugar
yeah.
cane. And then the technical or the certification bodies don't know how to measure or require that. And so you have to be at the table to help people understand what your practices are and what you can and can't be evaluated against. And I think that is, or the human rights requirements, where a lot of the requirements around due diligence or indigenous people aren't as black and white as the requirements would like them to be. And so you kind of have to be on ground and understand the local context to understand how to implement what a best practice is. And you can't really comply by the book or what the European or Californian requirement is asking you. So I think that's one of the detractors here, Michael, and that
Yeah.
I think there are a lot more people sitting at the table and creating these rules that, when they're plugged into the requirements in the supply chain, don't make a lot of sense. And so I think one of the big challenges for companies, and not only in Latin America but in all developing countries, are to have more experienced international, public relations or technical staff that can sit at a table and have those conversations with
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
buyers, with certification bodies, with European Union, and say, the requirement you're drafting or the laws you're drafting are wonderful, but when you start living them on ground, they don't make a lot of sense because of XYZ.
Yeah, right. Because the different cultures, and yeah, the different environments, the different cultures, the different structures, the different societal norms, etc. The values aren't 100% aligned, right? And
See, I
yeah,
wouldn't say I talk that much about values because we want to talk about, doing business improperly. But I want to say
yeah.
um, about, just how things are implemented and how you're measuring, something like 100% recycled water, or what is a consultation? How do you go outside of your company fence and talk to indigenous populations, and what is the requirements? What is actually feasible to do that, and what counts
Mm,
as a valid consultation with indigenous people?
got you. That makes a lot of sense. So, are you guys expanding worldwide? You mentioned you have operations now in South Africa and other locations, eh? Or you're dealing with companies
um,
in in
well, you know
Africa?
what? I don't know. I guess we are. If we sent the proposal, huh? So it
Yeah.
wasn't a strategic decision. It just more responded to an opportunity. Our area of influence is going to continue to be mainly LATAM, but happy to serve clients when they have challenges in other geographies, I guess, as a
Yeah, but your
response.
concentration is there. So companies that may be watching this or whatever, they get before they come in and set up operations in Latin America. They need to be speaking to someone like yourself about all these different issues, right? I mean, they at least need to call and say, have a consultation, right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Happy
Yeah.
to assist either in identifying proper areas, in identifying proper financing, and or complying with internal policies on social and environmental impacts.
I love it. Will you ever get involved in the politics across the Latin American world or the global South or others to try and correct some of the issues that are out there or prevent uh, slippery slopes from going being created through positive efforts that don't turn out quite the way we want them to be? Because I mean that's what you're preventing in many cases, right?
I have worked in that area, particularly in promoting competitiveness and driving investment for the region. And I hope to facilitate investment in the future. I think a lot of investment is going towards other geographies in the world that I'd like to see driven towards Latin America, where I think we have a lot of resources, be it both social and environmental. And I'd like to see the development in Latin America done correctly.
Mm. Excellent stuff. Excellent stuff. Hey, Nikki, I thank you so much for your time. It was well worth chasing you down and scheduling and rescheduling and to make this happen. It's really been fabulous. It really
Thank
has.
you, Michael. It's been a lot of fun having this conversation, and your questions are angled differently, so it's been interesting.
Is that a compliment or was that
It is.
a?
It is. Your intellectual curiosity has been fun.
Well, excellent. Well, I mean that's
So
the
you're
purpose. Is
welcome in Guatemala whenever you'd like, and I hope this has been of value to your listeners.
Oh, I'm sure it has been. It really has been to me, and I really appreciate it very much. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope the impacts that you're driving for um, are positive as they possibly could be.
Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome. Hey,
Have a good
everybody,
one.
thank you for listening and downloading the Sustainiacs. I'm Michael Vincent. She's Nikki Bahr. She is the CEO or are you CEO?
I am CEO
She's
and
CEO and
founder.
founder of Sustainable Strategies, right? And if you're going to do anything in Latin America, you need to look her up. She's Nikki Bahr. She's on LinkedIn. That's how I found her. She's awesome. Thank you so much, Nikki. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Have a good one. Take care, Michael.
Right on. Peace and love, everybody.